Welcome to everyone who's joining this event, this Teams event. Happy Earth Day, 50th anniversary of Earth Day to everybody. The pandemic has certainly changed all of our efforts over the last spring semester, including canceling the TRACS Summit that was planned for several weeks ago. So in an effort to connect TRACS members around the state of Texas, we reached out to both of our keynote speakers, and they both agreed to provide virtual talks. And we'll be joined today by Moses West, and we have another keynote speaker tomorrow. Before I introduce Moses, I want to quickly recognize Marianella Franklin and her entire team down at UT Rio Grande Valley. They were totally set up to host, for the second time, to host this year's summit. And they had to quickly pivot into managing a broad cancellation and did that very smoothly. So thank you, Marianella, and we'll be back as soon as we can. I also want to recognize Dallas County Community College District as a sponsor for the summit, and EarthX, which is happening up in Dallas. And they've also converted, so I want to encourage people to try to mute yourself if you can. But EarthX was also a primary sponsor for the TRACS Summit. They have a ton of virtual events as well today and for the next several days. So I encourage you to go check out EarthX. Moses West was born in Georgia. He was raised in Germany. He came back to the United States and even remembers celebrating the first Earth Day 50 years ago in San Antonio as a grade schooler, and just shared a little earlier that he still got some of his memorabilia from those days. He later attended both Incarnate Word and Trinity in San Antonio. He went into service in the Armed Forces and was a Ranger, and as well was a member of the 101st Airborne Division. He is the founder and owner of AWG Contracting, which is a leading edge technology provider of how you produce water from air. They have successfully completed deployments to Puerto Rico and Flint, Michigan, providing an extremely pure and unlimited source of free water, and they did this on donations as well. The mission to Puerto Rico was the first time any technology such as this has ever been powered by solar energy. Excuse me. Mr. West is currently developing new methods of implementation of his technology to include social responsibility and ownership of local water, food, and energy production based around the science of centralized point-specific water production.
Is now joining.
And I'm sure we'll hear more about that here in a minute. And I can't fail to mention that in a particular Austin angle, February 6th, 2018 was proclaimed Moses West Day in the city of Austin in recognition of his work. So please, everybody, join me in welcoming Moses West.
Hello, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be recognized today as the speaker for Earth Day. When I was a child here in Texas in 1968, we started to celebrate that. Our teachers were very in tune with our environment. Growing up in a military environment, we were very keen about our water and our air. As most of the time, people in the military, we live in.
Yeah, about 3 minutes after the hour.
Children, we played in the woods quite often. So clean air, clean water was what we thrived on. We studied it from 68, 71, 72, 73. I've actually got a whole stack of my documentation from a child here. I'll just share one of them with you. This is from 50 years ago, and it still has all my the work in it. So we study different countries around the world. I was going through some of it last night, and I think we actually wrote better as children than we do as adults. So what I sought to do, I traveled the world for an extended period of time. I lived in Australia. I've actually flown around the world 24 times, and I have a keen interest in the environment and what we do to our planet and how we treat it. I've experienced things in the ocean. I've swam with whales. I've swam with sharks. I love going as far out as I possibly can. I get my equipment from the SEAL team, so I go out there and do that. But this connection that I have to the earth and what's beneath my feet is extremely important to me, as this is my health that's involved in this, as well as your health of what we eat and what we drink. So Earth Day, for me, is an exceptional day where we should all recognize and strive to do something better for the future of this planet. And we can see right now what we're living through is the direct result of what we have done and what we do not do uh, to the planet. I've worked with. I'm very blessed to have come up with this technology that I found, and water is one of the things. Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, endangered species. So when we look at water, we've always looked at it from the sense that the water, and I call the water that we look at as the low-hanging fruit. But as scientists and engineers, we know that water comes in three forms. Water comes in the form of a liquid, it comes in the form of a solid, and it comes in the form of a gas. So the low-hanging
Second time to host
that we see that flows in a river is in an aquifer. We use technology to get the water from the aquifer, and then water that's in our ice caps in glaciers, the top at the North Pole, the South Pole, tops of mountains. But the superhighway of water, the superhighway of water, which we need to get the water on the ground clean, of course, our aquifers clean, but all of that water, it gets there through one source. The way that it gets there is I'm outside today, I'm in my backyard, the humidity has got to be 80%. Right now I'm sitting in millions of gallons of water, millions of gallons of water. And so this gaseous state of the water, I just started to think about it, and that's the superhighway of our water system. And we have such great technology. Just think, back in 1969, we left the Earth and we went all the way to another planet. If we would have had an iPhone back then, we could have gone all the way to Mars. The iPhone, the computer in your iPhone is stronger than what was in the Saturn V rocket that took us all the way to the moon. So the advancement of technology advances condition. So I took this source of water, developed the technology to remove this water from the air, but at an energy consumption level that had to either match or be lower than groundwater. And right now we match groundwater, and now we working with Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio. That's another one I got to pinch myself. I can't believe that I actually get to work with the wonderful engineers over there, and engineers at Magnum Engineering and Brandt. Those are my manufacturers of the equipment that I build, and I build this equipment for the United States military. These machines are just absolutely phenomenal. But I did some development to the technology.
the founder and owner of
The capability. We have the capability to live in a place where all the water is completely gone from the ground or from the surface, but it's here in the air where I sit today. I had a machine here just a bit ago, a few weeks ago, that was sitting here on the back of my truck that belonged to the Army, and I took it back to the manufacturing plant. I had to move it there. Was doing some work on it here in my home, the way I do. That's how I like to work. But if I had one of those machines here working on solar power, I would never have to tap into the city water or base water or anything ever again. So this technology, we've advanced it to the place now, working with Southwest Research Institute, where we want clean water, clean air on Earth Day, and this is the reason we formed the EPA. But now with technology, we can actually pull that water out of the atmosphere in all the quantities that we need. So if you're able to produce water, you're able to grow food. If you grow food, you need power to do that. You can do that with solar energy. So when we were in Puerto Rico, what we actually did was that was the first net zero building that I know of in the world. We supplied in Puerto Rico over 5,000 people with drinking water every day, uh, continuously. In my spare time, when we hooked to the Tesla solar array and the battery backup, we got to run the machine 24 hours a day. So we turned photons into electrons into H2O molecules. I was making water so fast. I think I sent you a picture of that, and it's online too. If you go on the Water Rescue Foundation page, Facebook page, go down to the place in Puerto Rico. I had this huge water tanker that we found, and I was producing so much water, and people were taking water at the jugs that you see are 2 gallons. I would give people as much as 300 gallons if they ask for it, 500 gallons if they ask for it, and I make that back just in a few hours. And I would work long days and all night, work with the Puerto Rican military, National Guard, and we found that tanker over in the yard, and that tanker had over 6,000 gallons in it. And I filled that up in my spare time, and that was the backup. I did that by myself. So working alone as one individual, I've made over 1 million gallons by myself. If I had 1,000 of me doing this, is what I would like to do. This is a technology that solves one of the things that we look to solve on Earth Day. I'm a very radical activist when it comes to our environment, but radical in the sense that I will give every last bit of my energy to do what is right to help somebody else. And with this technology, this is a very social oriented technology, and a social oriented technology is something that we can go back several years. We've realized that what we've tried to do so far does not truly work, but going back several years, how we lived, but now you can use technology. So what all of what we want to do today in our communities, such as food production, water production, energy production, using complete renewables to do the process. There's so many people that I've worked with for this, and for this honor to be your keynote speaker today. I cannot a keen interest in UT, but I have to recognize the folks over at Texas A&M too, because they've supported a lot of this. So we're not left or right here. We're moving into a new time. So you guys can have your rivalry on the football field, but your brain muscle, you got to combine that right now to get this done. So we know how to make millions of gallons of water now at 10 times less energy consumption than the units that I've made before in the box. Southwest Research Institute is working with me on that, and with Dr. Les Shepard and Dr. Jim Mazurkowitz over at Texas A&M. I have a brief Par Rawson over there, and the folks, Sid Miller up at the Texas Agricultural Commission. Wonderful people all the way around. Dexter Moon, my contracting officer, Latoya Ruby, she's been a devout artist activist for this technology. She was the one who actually raised the money with the Rauschenberg Foundation so that we could go to Flint, Michigan. On the mission to Flint, when I arrived there with a big machine, there was something that I noticed when I got there. One thing people said was, "We want the press there. We want to blow this thing up. We want to show that you're out here to do this." And I didn't want to have any part of that. The people don't need press. What the people need is they need water. They need to know somebody's really going to care. So when we arrived, instead of working as hard as I do, I looked at the machine sitting there, thought about it for a second, looked at the people standing there. I said, "You know what? You own this machine. You're going to run this machine. You're going to do this. Take ownership, take care of the security, do it all." It absolutely worked fantastic. So here they had their own source of water. They managed it. They did everything, and I got to take a break. So giving the neighborhood, empowering them to do this is something that I just discussed in engineers instead of working so hard to do it all on my own. And that was all due through Latoya Ruby Frazier's donations and the Rauschenbergs. So that's the mission I have, and it had all started right here in Texas with Andrew Souter finding me in a military base over at Camp Mabry. I had 3 machines over there at Camp Mabry. I was making so much water that I made my own river. I saw animals coming out that I hadn't seen before. I had the best wildflowers anywhere in Texas because I made a river. And all these machines were working, and a lot of the power in Austin is from renewables. So that was it's just been an incredible adventure, and it's an incredible honor to share some of this with you. So that's pretty much my story. There is I make water, and I'm now 50 years as an Earth Day participant.
That's great, Moses. And I'll encourage people that if you have questions for Moses, put them in the chat. there, and I know there's a couple other things about your approach here about how pure the water is. So maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
The purity of the water is absolutely incredible. When you remove we have people who capture rain. The rain falls through the air. It picks up things as it falls through the air. It'll hit your rain barrel. It'll pick things up off your roof. But that's fine. You can filter that off. But when you pick up what I'm breathing right now, that is absolutely pure. The rain has washed everything out of the air. So when I have something that I've made the correct temperature to run water off of, it hits this, runs through this, but that air came from a filter before it hit that. Then it goes through carbon filtration. The water is pure enough that you could actually pull it through a carbon filter, push through a filter, and use it for dialysis. If you're a moonshine maker, you got the best water to make moonshine with right there.
Well, hold on, that's a different presentation. But I also want to, I mean, we have folks from all over the state on this presentation right now.
To remove this,
friends with A&M, and we don't play football anymore, but we left it on a good note from my perspective. But and we'll look for questions from anybody here. I have one to start us off though. What kind of research opportunities for students who are currently in higher ed, either undergrads or graduates, what kind of next steps are there from your mind in advancing this water from air technology or approach, including the social equity angle that you are passionate about?
Let's take a deep breath here. Right now, we're in the middle of a crisis like we've never seen before. We have these monumental things that happen to us throughout history, and we happen to be living through one. We know our parents and so forth lived through World War I, the first pandemic, World War II, the Great Depression, so on. So this is this generation's. How I see this technology and the advancement in the use of it with academics. Here in the state of Texas, we're going to get hit by a hurricane this year. Florida will get hit, the Gulf Coast will get hit. Our hurricanes are greater and stronger. We need for the emergency model of these machines. On the academic side, we need to have a supply of these machines here, like the large machines that I've taken elsewhere in the world. And on the academic side, students from every university in the state of Texas needs to start to have a machine that they can start to develop, to work with, to find best use methods find best use methods of how to deploy that machine, best use methods of how to deploy that machine with hydroponic food operations, emergency management, military usage, home usage, net zero, emergency water for hospitals, because this is a definite solution. This part of the water that we've forgotten about in the atmosphere, there's a complete body of study that the students should take up and run with. And that's why I've decided to leave all of my patents and everything I do. I own all of it, and all of the research and development. I'm not going to be here forever. I want to leave that with you in the form of a foundational 501c that takes the profit of that, and from the use of this technology, from groundwater recharge, and all that money should go back to the state for education, to students for research and development, to Southwest Research for the advancement of this technology, because there's three things we're always going to need that I know how to do and how to combine them. That is water, to make that in the millions of gallons, where we can now measure it in acre feet, using less energy than pulling it out of the ground, production of food, and using solar power to do that. That's all what the students need to do in the way of research. That's what I would like to do with that.
That's fabulous. We do have a couple of questions coming in. I'm just going to take them quickly in order. One of the latest COVID hotspots in the country is Navajo Nation. Has anyone from America's indigenous communities reached out to you yet?
Yes, the nations have been reaching out to me for several years. I'm a retired Army officer. I spend everything that I have in this. Everything that comes in from the military comes in and builds machines, goes out. I have one machine right now. If I would love to give that machine away. I'm doing some advancements to it, but right now, I could definitely solve the problem for their water, Navajo nations. And one thing people will say, well, they've put the nations in places where the humidity is almost none, in the most arid places. Well, if you look at how the atmosphere works, so whenever the sun goes down and those UV rays go away, every evening, guess what happens? The humidity shoots up. You can program the machine to operate when the conditions are optimal. You can do this on stored solar power. So yes, I would love to get one of my units out to the nations. Absolutely.
And this kind of relates to another question we had about how is this technology available to communities at this point in time?
At this point in time, I have the capability to mass produce these units. As I told you earlier, I told you a few things that I've done that you didn't know about, and I had to think about them to tell you of them. They're pretty significant, but that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is getting this groundwork done. So when the emergency does come, and I'm there now, especially meeting Rick and Matt over at and bringing my manufacturing back to Texas to supply jobs here. Now I have the capability to roll these machines out by the thousands. I stay pretty low key with what I do. I don't need to advertise that, and I'm not in any great hurry to rush and have someone try to send me in the wrong direction. But yes, we have the capability to do that.
That's great. So people would maybe just contact you directly.
Oh yes, my contracting officer, I call him Top. Top is the name of, it's what we use in the military for the number one NCO you've got. We have this wonderful relationship, and I couldn't figure out why we're working so good together. I was commanding officer in the military, and he was a sergeant, and so we finally figured out when we sat down and talked long enough. So Dexter Moon and Dexter at awgcontractus.com. He takes in all the orders, and right now we build custom build for the United States Army. They like our equipment, so instead of it going to the Army and going deep, I'd rather start coming to you as well and being behind your house and getting you off the grid.
And I think that's what a lot of our audience here is also interested in. So we've had a couple of questions about the technology. So comparing to in terms of purity, compare it to a solar oven in terms of purifying water, and then maybe go a little bit deeper into the technology of pulling water from the air.
Oh, it's you know how sometimes we let me turn my phone off. Rings. What we need to do is sometimes some things are so simple you kind of look and you miss the forest for the trees. This is so simple. This is incredibly simple. It's you have a surface area that you maintain at a certain temperature. You filter the air that comes through there. It hits that surface area, just like that glass you have, like when you're sitting there with all your iced tea glasses on the table in the summertime, and you have to keep wiping that table off. That is clean water. But when you filter that air before it hits your glass, and then you filter it again when it comes off the glass, that water is just incredibly pure. And there's I gave you the water quality reports and a PFOA water quality report from the LCRA, the Lower Colorado River Authority. The purity level of the water is just exceptional. And we tested the military, Trinity University, and Texas A&M, and the United States military wanted to know about HAPs, hazardous or airborne particulates. So we have a high ozone day. We have cars passing by. When we did the testing at Trinity, the air wasn't that good because we're at a place where highways intersected, and during rush hour traffic, the highway is a parking lot. I would stand there and I would just say the air is horrible, but the machine, the way I've designed it, the air comes through at a speed. That's part of the technology. It comes through at a certain speed, slows down, speeds up, pushes the air out, and you have a surface area, but it doesn't pick up the particles in the air, and then it's filtered off anyway. So every particle that's in the air has it's like we have a dew point to get the water. So other chemicals have their points where they come out of the water. Either they're extremely high or extremely low, but they're nowhere close to where the H2O molecule wants to hit a surface and turn to water. That's how you keep it clean. It's very simple. It's not complicated.
Right. Now, I've kind of just the way that dew collects on a surface in the morning, it does seem to be like one of these things. It's always staring us straight in the face, and figuring out a way to harness it is very cool.
Yes.
And have you? I'm going to add another question here, and I encourage other folks to keep adding their questions to the chat box here on Teams. So this clearly aligns with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6, related to water, clean water available for all. Do you want to speak any more to that and kind of how you've thought about that?
The 17 tenets of sustainability. Yes, there's Mario down in the valley, and Ida Obion here in San Antonio. The sustainability goals set forth by the UN. You basically need water for all of them. You need equality is part of it, equal distribution, food production, but the foundation of everything is definitely water and sustainability. And so yes, it definitely ties in with that. The schools down in the valley, I just was down there recently, and I think the state of Texas, the school districts right now are looking at having the smaller unit installed in the schools. So right now, basically, if every school district, it absolutely worked. Every hospital had one in a hospital. Every uh, grocery store, shopping center had a machine like this. If the water ever cut off or we had a national emergency, we would not be out of water.
That's very cool. Next, I got another couple questions via text. What and providing them to school districts is a fascinating idea. How much do they cost? I don't know. I don't know if you touched on that directly, or I don't want to. Or does it matter? Does it vary depending on the size of the machine? I would imagine.
It varies depending on the size of the machine, and it varies depending on what the machine is going to be used for. For the military machines, they're very robust. I have to design the machine for the military where I can probably drop it for 1 meter. I'm designing a marine machine right now for the United States Marine Corps. Boy, that thing's going to be like a little tank. I just got to figure out how to make it lighter. But for the home unit, I would like to see the home unit get under $35,000. But I cannot move manufacturing overseas. I cannot, and I will not. I will not. Whoever's going to manufacture these machines, I manufacture there now with Brandt and Magnum Engineering, and they make a living wage. They make a living wage. I'm not here to line my pockets, so I would put all of my profit back into this because I just believe people need water. I'm not here to get wealthy on this, but the price of the machine is definitely going to be higher because it's made here and we're employing Americans. I'm not building anything in China. I'm not going to build anything across the border. So that's what's going to keep the price a little bit higher, but we have the quality in the product, and it's our product.
Right. That's great. We have another question on the chat. Do you envision this way of harvesting water from the air to replace groundwater use? I mean, especially maybe in communities where there's a high degree of drilling and fracking going on and kind of hammering the groundwater.
One thing we're all part of a team, and people tend to get very defensive and they recoil when you say that you want to come in and you want to replace something, because there are people employed doing other things. I feel that I know that the problem with water is so great. When we do something, we call
Mark
it
Campbell
is now joining.
combined arms effort. So with the combination of desal, you may not like desal, you may not like a brackish water reusage or gray water, but all of the we're a planet that's hot and drier and more populated. So I am a tool. I'm a member. I'm a member of the other technology to produce water. I don't want to take over anything. I want to help augment other systems. Where those systems lack, this system will pick up and another system will pick up. We need to work together on everything that we do with water as we move forward into the future. Brackish water might have a usage. This water has a medical and industrial usage and a very pure water usage for people with cancer, people with immune deficiencies that need clean water, and crops that need to be extremely pure when people want their kids to eat organic fruits and vegetables. It is absolutely pure. The rain is, I think of it as a combined team effort.
Right. No, that's the balancing of the different water sources in a given community is a very tricky, challenging thing. I do want to remind people when you join the meeting to try to mute your microphone. We had another question about have you had any kind of overlaps with aquaponics in terms of your use of technology in terms of kind of providing the makeup water to an aquaponics type of operation? You've mentioned the food angle and some of that.
Definitely. I know how to do like Barrio down in the valley. I know how to do all of that. It's a I don't you know what I don't want to say it's too easy, but you know what I'm going to go out on a limb here. It's too easy. If you have your garden hose, you have water coming out. You have water coming out of that hose. You would plug that into your hydroponics. That's how easy it is. I have a big machine that's producing 2,000 gallons of water a day. I plug it into the hydroponics. It's just that easy. You need the lights to work in the hydroponics, but you don't have a power line by you. You have solar panels and a big Tesla solar battery. Wow, you hook all that together, and then you stand there and you look in amazement. Boy, that wasn't that difficult. I don't know why no one's done it before.
Well, yeah, I know, and I sense a theme, a recurring theme here in your talk about this. What's the in our campus sustainability project, we always get this question about if we have a new type of technology about the maintenance cost. So over time, and I think I sense where you're going to go with this, but it may not. But there's always first cost, and then there's always maintenance costs.
Okay, now if you buy something from China and you put it here and it costs you $10,000, in 2 years you might have to replace it. But if you build something like someone of my longevity here on this earth, I build things like I like to build my equipment like a Sherman tank. I like to build stuff with quality. I like to use steel. I like to use American components. I like to weld my things. I don't like rivets. I like to build things where the guys who are doing the work want to sign their name on the inside. Moses was here because that's going to last. I used to rebuild Coke machines. I pulled a Coke machine out one time. It was built in December of 1941. You remember Pearl Harbor was bombed in December. So I saved that Coke machine, and then when I got to the time to rebuild it, I replaced all the electronics in it. I was looking at the compressor and all the lines, and I was thinking, now I'm going to have to replace that too, because it's definitely not going to work after all these years. I replaced the electronics. I said, well, why not plug it in? Plugged it in, flipped it on. It worked because it was built with quality. If you build with quality, it's going to last. So when people talk about maintenance today, they're talking about new age maintenance. But if you're old enough, you remember how to build things with quality. I'm not going to build anything cheap. So when this thing gets built, you're going to get bored because you're just going to sit there and look at it.
I think we have time for one other question, and as I let that question try to come in, I'll ask one more. Given the kind of unprecedented challenge that we're all in right now, and understanding that the recovery from this will have a lot of opportunities for society to do things differently, to choose different ways of getting back on our feet, maybe what we would do differently. So what, if you were to try to forecast out 2 years from now, and we're kind of through a couple waves of the pandemic, and we're kind of now coming out, like what would be some of your hopes? Maybe more generally, not necessarily related to your technology, but because you've been thinking about this kind of space for so long, what kind of, as Moses West, kind of what are your hopes for society looking like or doing differently in a couple years?
I don't hope anymore. What I do is when I sit and I meet with folks from Southwest Research Institute, or I sit down and I talk with Dr. Shepard, and I sit down and I talk with my folks over at Supply Corps in the United States Army and my engineers over at Magnum. I'm saying we're going to do something now. Hoping for something different is not going to work for me. I have this downtime, this idle time. I'm using that time right now to develop everything that we'll need when we come out of this to give you a viable solution, something give you a choice that you did not have before. You will have that choice at the end of this. I'm not going to sit here and be idle. I'm not going to think about wishing something in the future. I know what I can do right now, and that is what I'm going to do. There's too many people suffering. Something I need to share, I would like to share with you. I went through the COVID virus, and also too, I discovered last year when I was in Flint, Michigan, that I had cancer, and it was an aggressive form of cancer. And so I'm very fortunate to be sitting here talking with you today. Today is the 22nd. 22 days ago, I was in surgery and positive with the COVID virus. And then on the 4th of this month, a doctor walked into the hospital and he told me, he looked at me puzzled and he said, "I don't know why you're still alive." And we talked a bit, and he understood that I have a strict diet, I have a very strict regime of exercise. So I'm fortunate here to be talking to you today. So that time is not borrowed anymore. It's time that I have to use. I have to use this. So now I'm a cancer survivor and a COVID survivor as well, sitting here talking to you. The first week of this month was bad. It was not good. I've got a couple of and I can leave 5 miles. So no hope today. And that's
Well, that's a very hopeful message, and that may be where we should end. I think if anybody else has additional questions for Moses or for AWG or for Dexter Moon, who weighed in on the chat there, feel free to contact them directly. And I want to thank everybody for jumping into this with the Texas Regional Alliance for Campus Sustainability. Please put up a bunch of little clappy hand icons to thank Moses West for his time today.
Thank you all. It was an absolute pleasure and honor. And by the way, too, I'm actually speaking at the for Earth Day. It's
Is
been
now
canceled,
exiting.
but thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to meeting you in person someday in the future.
I hope so too. Y'all take care. Thank you.
All right.
And happy
Thank
Earth
you.
Day.
Happy
Bye-bye.
Earth
Is
Day.
now exiting.